Welcome to Your Town, Chicago. I'm Tim Samuelson from the Department of Cultural Affairs. On today's program, we'll explore the phenomenon known as the loop. Then we'll go behind the scenes of movies made in the Windy City and sample some cool jazz from the Hot House. But first, take a journey with me back in time, and we'll see the event that turned the city from a mud hole into a metropolis. Chicago really had an image problem, and they really wanted to show the world that yes, we're a new city, but we've got culture and we have status in the world as well. One of the things that they really lobbied for and pushed hard was to get Chicago to be the home of the world's Columbian Exposition. The building of the fair was something that was absolutely heroic. The chief of construction was Daniel Burnham, who really had almost an insurmountable task of building this dream city out of this kind of swampy, undeveloped area that was then known as Jackson Park. Jackson Park had been laid out earlier, but they had never quite finished it and quite filled it in. And water had to be moved around and excavated and graded, and they brought the great landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted in to be able to do the plantings and to create this wonderful environment. One of the focal points of the fair were the waterways. Probably the most famous was the Court of Honor, this great rectangular body of water with classical railings around it and buildings with domes, pediments, columns, standing as far as the eye could see. You had the great administration building with a big dome. That was the center of it. And then the Statue of the Republic, this great woman by the sculptor Daniel Chester French with her arms upraised. And then the waterways would then go from the formal Court of Honor into this kind of meandering, naturalistic ponds and basins. And you would have grasses and trees along the edges of the water. And then it was designed, you could come along and see these kind of naturalistic trees and grasses, and then suddenly some big classical building would loom in front of you like a surprise. And the World's Columbian Exposition was interesting in that it really didn't take the typical attitude of the time when it shut out the world. It actually showed Chicago as part of the international scene. And there were buildings that were built by foreign governments that showed the achievements of their own countries and their own industries. And there also were displays on what they called the Midway Plaisance, things like Irish Village and the Street of Cairo, which were kind of tourist attractions, but they gave glimpses of other cultures and other places that people weren't bringing attention to as much at the time. So this whole idea of kind of an international culture was a very interesting part of the World's Columbian Exposition. There were a lot of firsts at the fair, like moving sidewalks, electric lights being used in ways like nobody'd ever seen them before. The Ferris wheel. Chicago had the first. The cars were the size of a railroad car. Each one would seat about 60 people. 4 miles out from the fair site, in what was once a suburban area known as Englewood, entrepreneurs thought, well, they would get some of the guests coming there as well, and built a huge apartment building known as the Yale. It's a colossal building, towering above the buildings of the neighborhood. And you walked inside the great stone entrance and found yourself into this courtyard ringed with iron balconies going stories up into the air, and then surmounted by a big glass skylight at the top with light pouring in. You can imagine somebody coming from some small town coming to Chicago and finding that this is the place they were going to stay. 27 million people came to the World's Columbian Exposition. And it really was a collaborative effort to think about how to make this fair something that had something for everybody. This was really a showplace of modern technology and what the future would be.